Welcome to the fourth and final section relating to the introduction, answering the question, what kind of book is Revelation? So we're really asking what literary form is this book, and it's generally agreed that it is something in the apocalyptic genre. The Greek word apocalypsis means revelation or uncovering. And this book is the first piece of literature to actually be named as an apocalypse. John begins his writing, The Apocalypse of Jesus Christ, in Revelation 1:1. Now, it's very possible that your translation says the revelation of Jesus Christ, simply translating this word. So what is the literary form of this book? Well, scholars actually recognize that Revelation has three distinct literary genres. It is a letter, it is a prophecy, and finally it conforms to the general notion of what apocalyptic is. Using the book of Revelation as a kind of model, people have worked backward and labeled other works as apocalyptic. The book of Revelation contains a revelation given by God through an otherworldly mediator to a human seer, disclosing future events which form an admonition to the hearer. A group of scholars, using a general definition like this, looked at all the apocalyptic literature between 250 BC and 250 AD, and they were led by the scholar J.J. Collins. They came up with a definition of apocalypse, which is actually quite complicated, but I put it into the course pack and it's here on this slide. But if you forgive me, it means a narrative where an otherworldly being, usually an angel, reveals heavenly secrets to an earthly recipient about end-time salvation and the heavenly world. Although Revelation has many features in common with Jewish apocalyptic writings, it actually has more in common with the books of the prophets of the We may not have thought about this, but there are a number of places in the prophets in the Old Testament that have a very similar motif of a heavenly being revealing a throne, angels, that sort of thing. So Ezekiel 38 and 39, Isaiah 24 and 27 or 56 to 66, Zechariah 9 through 14, and the book of Daniel all have this kind of. Biblical scholar Luke Johnson says that Revelation kind of breaks the mold. It is a work of great artistry. It is a new, powerful synthesis of many Old Testament prophetic and apocalyptic texts. It contains elements which resemble a type of Judaism referred to as Merkaba mysticism. The Merkaba was the throne of God in heaven. And so, as we saw in Ezekiel, Ezekiel has a vision of this throne of God in heaven. And so Jews would meditate on these passages from Ezekiel in hopes of having a spiritual experience or encounter with God. And this kind of Jewish faith was called Merkaba mysticism. This book does not purport to be from some ancient figure, but from Jesus Christ himself, who has only recently died and been resurrected. Many other apocalyptic books are named after some ancient figure, whether Enoch or Moses, and they're kind of written as a literary fiction that is not revelation. So John does not engage in fictitious predictive prophecy. He doesn't pretend to be prophesying things that have already taken place. He frequently describes his work as a prophecy. And also the work has some elements of a letter with an opening salutation and a closing formula. So it's kind of a mixed genre at best, if you like. Clearly, it does contain elements of the apocalyptic genre, but many scholars think it has more in common with these passages from the Old Testament that we talked about. So one scholar has suggested calling it apocalyptic prophecy. Though Revelation has many features in common with other Jewish writings, it is more in common with the books of the Old Testament. One striking feature of Revelation is the number of parallels that it has to the book of Ezekiel. And I have put this chart into the course pack, but if you look through it, you can see that step by step, the book of Revelation parallels passages from Ezekiel, moving all the way from chapter 1 to chapter 48 of Ezekiel, but just many, many parallels with the book of Ezekiel, as if Ezekiel itself could almost form a kind of table of contents for the book of Revelation. Again, we mentioned before that the book of Revelation is literally steeped in Old Testament allusions.